Welcome back to Narrations. Some mothers fight quietly. Some mothers fight patiently. And some mothers refuse to stop fighting even when the entire world tells them they're wrong. Tonight's story begins in Los Angeles in the late 1920s, where a single mother's search for her missing son turns into a battle against an entire system. This is Changeling. It's about truth, about corruption, and about a mother who refuses to accept a lie. Christine Collins lives an ordinary life in Los Angeles. She works as a supervisor at the telephone company, one of the few women in her office trusted with leadership responsibilities. Every day she manages employees, answers complaints, and handles the constant flow of calls connecting the city. But when the workday ends, Christine's life becomes something much simpler and far more important. She goes home to her son. Walter Collins is 9 years old, polite, curious, and old enough to understand that his mother works very hard to support them. Christine is raising him alone, and the bond between them has been built on years of shared responsibility and quiet trust. Their small home is modest but warm. Christine cooks dinner. Walter tells her stories about school. The routines of their life are simple, but they carry a sense of stability that many families struggle to create. One Saturday morning, Christine is unexpectedly called into work to cover a shift. She promises Walter she will be home that evening and leaves him with clear instructions to stay inside and finish his chores. When she returns later that day, the house is silent. Walter is gone. At first, Christine assumes he has stepped out to play or visit a friend, but as the hours pass, her worry grows. She begins searching the neighborhood, knocking on doors and asking if anyone has seen him. No one has. The panic becomes overwhelming. Christine contacts the police. But the response she receives is surprisingly slow. The officers explain that missing person cases often resolve themselves and suggest she wait before assuming the worst. For a mother who knows her son's routines perfectly, the delay feels unbearable. Days pass with no sign of Walter. Christine searches constantly, walking through the streets, questioning neighbors, and returning to the police station again and again asking for updates. Then, several months later, something extraordinary happens. The police claim they have found Walter. A boy has been located in another state and identified as Christine's missing son. The department announces the discovery publicly, framing the case as a success that proves their effectiveness in handling missing children cases. Christine travels to the train station where the boy will arrive. Reporters gather. Photographers prepare their cameras. Police officers stand proudly, expecting a moment of joyful reunion. But when the boy steps off the train, Christine feels something immediately. Something is wrong. The child standing in front of her looks similar to Walter. But he is not her son. She studies his face carefully. His height. His voice. The details that only a mother would notice. And with growing certainty she tells the police the truth. This is not Walter. The officers insist she is mistaken. They explain that months of stress may have clouded her memory. Children change when they are separated from their families, they argue, and the boy clearly recognizes her as his mother. But Christine refuses to accept their explanation. She knows her child. The police, however, have already announced the successful recovery of Walter Collins to the public. Admitting a mistake would embarrass the department and raise uncomfortable questions about their investigation. So instead of reconsidering their conclusion, they pressure Christine to accept the boy. They encourage her to take him home for a trial period, suggesting that spending time together will help her recognize that he truly is her son. Reluctantly, Christine agrees. But the truth becomes impossible to ignore. The boy does not know Walter's teachers. He cannot remember familiar places. His physical measurements, height, dental records, do not match Walter's. Christine returns to the police with evidence proving the boy is not her son. Instead of helping her, the department begins treating her as a problem. Their solution is shocking. Using a law that allows authorities to detain individuals considered disruptive or unstable, the police have Christine committed to a psychiatric hospital. Her refusal to accept their story is now being framed as emotional instability. Inside the hospital, Christine meets other women who have been placed there under similar circumstances, individuals whose only crime was challenging authority. Yet even in that environment, Christine refuses to give up. Because somewhere out there, her real son is still missing. And she will not stop searching. Inside the psychiatric hospital, Christine Collins begins to understand the terrifying reality of the system she has challenged. The hospital is not filled with violent criminals or unstable patients, as she had imagined. Instead, many of the women there seem ordinary, frightened, confused, and often angry. As Christine slowly speaks with them, she learns that several of them were committed under similar circumstances. Some argued with their husbands. Others challenged the authority of police officers or local officials. In many cases, their confinement had less to do with mental illness and more to do with silencing women who had become inconvenient. Christine refuses to accept this fate. Even while trapped inside the hospital, she continues insisting on the truth. The boy the police returned to her is not Walter. Her determination eventually attracts the attention of Reverend Gustav Briegleb, a Presbyterian minister known for publicly criticizing corruption within the Los Angeles Police Department. Briegleb has been using his weekly radio sermons to call out abuses of power, and Christine's story becomes exactly the kind of case he has been warning the public about. Briegleb begins advocating for her release, speaking passionately on the radio about the injustice of committing a mother to a psychiatric institution simply because she refused to accept a false conclusion from the police. Public pressure begins building. Soon a lawyer takes interest in the case, challenging the legality of Christine's confinement. After weeks of struggle, the court finally orders her release. Christine walks out of the hospital determined not only to continue searching for Walter but also to expose the corruption that tried to silence her. The case quickly grows larger than anyone expected. While the investigation into Walter's disappearance continues, authorities in a rural area outside Los Angeles make a disturbing discovery. A Canadian teenager named Sanford Clark escapes from a remote chicken ranch in the town of Wineville and reports something horrifying to the police. He claims that his uncle, Gordon Northcott, has been abducting young boys and murdering them at the ranch. At first, the story seems unbelievable. But when officers search the property, they begin uncovering disturbing evidence that suggests the teenager is telling the truth. Sanford Clark describes how his uncle kidnapped boys from various locations and brought them to the ranch, forcing Sanford to help keep them captive. The crimes are brutal and difficult to comprehend. As investigators begin identifying victims connected to the Wineville murders, the possibility arises that Walter Collins may have been one of the children taken by Northcott. For Christine, the discovery is both a breakthrough and a nightmare. She desperately wants answers about what happened to her son, but the investigation only brings more uncertainty. Northcott is eventually captured and brought back to the United States to stand trial. During questioning, his statements are inconsistent and manipulative. At times he appears to confess to certain murders, only to later contradict himself. Christine attends the trial hoping for clarity. But the truth remains elusive. Some evidence suggests Walter may have been among the victims. Other details leave room for doubt. The uncertainty becomes one of the most painful aspects of Christine's search, the inability to know for certain what happened. Northcott is eventually convicted and sentenced to death for multiple murders connected to the Wineville ranch. Yet even with the trial concluded, Christine refuses to accept the possibility that Walter's story has ended. Her determination becomes the defining force of her life. She continues searching for information about missing children. She follows every lead, every rumor, every possibility that could point to Walter still being alive somewhere. Years pass. The city of Los Angeles changes. Police leadership shifts. The scandal surrounding Christine's wrongful commitment eventually leads to reforms in how the department handles such cases. But Christine herself never stops looking. She lives the rest of her life carrying the hope that one day the truth about her son will finally be revealed. Changeling is not just a story about corruption or injustice. It is the story of a mother who refused to let the world tell her she was wrong about her own child. Even when the system tried to silence her. Even when the truth became painful and uncertain. Christine Collins continued searching. Because for a mother, hope can last a lifetime. If you enjoyed listening to this narration, please like, share, and subscribe for more movie stories. I'll see you in the next one.